welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10, 10 seasons of empowering entrepreneurs, 10 seasons of identifying champions and innovators. One such innovator on the show tonight, and that's Nykaa, and we are talking with them about the big trends as far as the retail space is concerned. What should you, the entrepreneur, keep in mind when it comes to the e-tailing space, when it comes to beauty? What are some of the things you can look forward to? Should you be looking at the capital markets for fundraising? All of those in today's deep dive with the management behind Nykaa. Let me go ahead and introduce our guest tonight. Anchit Nayar, CEO E-commerce Beauty, Nykaa. Adwaita Nayar, co-founder Nykaa, CEO Nykaa Fashion. Adwaita, Anchit, so good having you here on the show with us today. This is an exclusive conversation really talking about all the trends that you want to call out for our entrepreneurs, about what we should be keeping our eye out on as far as the future is concerned. But I also want to kickstart today's interview by first and foremost talking about consumer engagement and that big trend that you really see in the mid to short term, and break that up into a couple of sub-trends. First and foremost, the content really which is available to someone who logs into your app. In fact, your app is one of the few ones that I do have on my phone, and the videos that you put out of influencers, all of it just seems very natural, very engaging, very organic. Now, this seems to be becoming really a mainstay as far as a lot of people engaging with audiences are concerned, and that's definitely a trend that you kicked off when it comes to the beauty market here in the country. So I want you to really talk about why this is so crucial and why you think that this is an important trend.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, I think for Nykaa, both on the beauty and fashion side, content is insanely important because we really are trying to make the consumption of these categories very rooted in education and inspiration. And for that, content is key. I think what Anchit and I are both struck by is just how dynamic the content landscape is. And even if we look back over the 9 years that we've been building Nykaa, what really constituted good content is changing dramatically. So if you started with the blog, then you moved on to social media, the rise of Instagram, we try to crack YouTube, then we went into sort of static influencer content, which was quite exciting. But really when you're looking at it today, you're seeing a lot of different trends. You're seeing the emergence of video as a form of content. That's been around, but I think it's being used more dynamically today. You're seeing the rise of live content, shoppable video content. I think the way you're working with influencers is looking a bit different from just a static promotion to doing more collaborations, more joint lines. That's also kind of dynamically changing. So I think it's really important for all new age brands to be extremely dynamic when it comes to both the format of the content they're using and then also how they're dispersing it. And I think dispersing is also quite critical. Just where it meets the consumer. You can't just assume the app works. You can't just assume the existing social media channels work. I think there's a lot of innovation happening in even where content is being consumed.
A follow-up question to that really is talking about premiumization, not just of the products, but also of the content, and why that is going to be crucial, and that's a trend which is here to stay.
I think it's a good question, Sunanda, and I'll answer it in two parts. Firstly, Nykaa prides itself on being a curated platform. And I think one thing that's happening in e-commerce is because of the fact that you can have an endless number of SKUs and brands on a platform, is becoming very cluttered. So Nykaa is we think consumer first. And as consumers ourselves, we would like a platform that is kind of helping us, assisting us along the way in the buying journey. So curation is an incredibly important part of all of that. And as part of curation, we've also understood that premium beauty and premium fashion and what one might call luxury is a segment that has been slightly under-catered to in the past, especially online. And India, if you look at BPC consumption today, India has some of the lowest premiumization rates in the world. So there is massive runway in India for premiumization to occur in the lifestyle categories of beauty and fashion. And Nykaa has the largest assortment of luxury and premium brands available on its platform today. So we are the perfect destination for premium beauty consumption. Also, the fact that we're an authentic retailer. If you look at other e-commerce platforms, they're mostly marketplaces, whereas we are an inventory-led business on the beauty side. So this allows us to guarantee to the end consumer that anything they buy on our platform is going to be 100% authentic. And I think that is incredibly important, especially on the premium end of the spectrum. Now, coming to the content and how it's premiumizing, the reality is that beauty and fashion are aspirational categories. And India is an aspirational society. And I think in India, it's, with everything that's happening with the favorable demographics of our consumer base and all of the development that's happening across the country, especially in smaller towns, there is a lot of awareness and growing aspiration for more premium products. And I think Nykaa is perfectly suited to deliver on that promise to its consumers.
Okay, a couple of things you've said I'm going to come back to, especially as far as the split between tier 1 and tier 2 markets. And I know that tier 2 is very crucial for you as a consumer base. But since we're continuing to call out some of the trends as far as what's really going to be those big things for our entrepreneurs to watch for in the mid to short term when it comes to the retail space, I do want to talk about the growth of homegrown brands. I do know that Nykaa is looking at building a house of brands and is looking at more and more of your own brands. But before I come to that and really speak about the plan that you have there, just talk to us about how, as a big trend, homegrown brands are catching up and more people are not shying away from buying, products that have been developed in India. I was very recently speaking with Sugar Cosmetics and the founder Vinita saying, you sell those products on your platform as well, and more of those products are really gaining traction here. As a trend, how do you like to call that out for our viewers?
Sunanda, I think basically what's happened is, firstly, Nykaa is a multi-brand retailer first and foremost.
Yeah.
We work with over 2,000 brand partners and with some of the best global and domestic brands both. And our job is to ensure that we are being good partners and giving them a platform on which to interact with our consumers. So that is our first mission. Now, because we have, Nykaa has brought beauty, I'll speak about beauty first. Nykaa has brought beauty online in India. And what this has done is this has democratized access for beauty consumption throughout the full length and breadth of the country. And what as a result, even now, homegrown brands who may not have the distribution of some of the larger consumer good companies have the ability now to interact with their consumers through our platform. And so we believe that Nykaa has played a role in helping for this growth of these direct-to-consumer homegrown brands. And at the same time, we're helping the established brands, some of the global established brands and domestic established brands to also grow their presence and their engagement with our consumers. So we're helping both ends of the spectrum. Now, the reality is, I think what's beautiful about India and the consumers here is they're so aware of what is available. And I think they've become extremely discerning for the better. And as a result, they don't differentiate between global versus domestic brands. And they're looking for high quality. And any brand that can deliver high quality is going to succeed.
Do you want to jump in on that as well, Adwaita?
I echo a lot of what Anchit says. I think for me, it's also, just coming back to the fundamentals, like India just didn't have enough brands. And I feel that acutely on the fashion side in particular, there's just so many white spaces in terms of categories where Indian women and men don't have enough choices. So I think it's a ripe playing field for new brands to emerge. And so my advice is it's a great time to jump into building any kind of consumer brand, whether it's across fashion, beauty, CPG and so forth.
Okay, so let's then talk about the IPO. Of course, that's on top of everyone's mind. And anything that you read around the time that the IPO had just taken place, anyone who had spoken with your mother, she has mentioned in all the interviews that I've seen that going through the IPO route, going public, that was never a question in her mind, and that you started preparing for it really early, that you ensure that corporate governance, even before you had gone through the IPO route by having independent directors, etc. on your board, that was crucial. One, I would love for both of you to just give us a sneak peek of what this IPO experience was like for you. And two, your advice for someone who's watching this interview, because we very often talk to our entrepreneurs on why they should look at tapping the capital markets as a means of fundraising and not just going through, say, VCP or through the banks. What would you want to tell them? Open to both of you. Adwaita, maybe to you first.
Yeah, I think the IPO experience was phenomenal for all of us as Team Nykaa, and also personally from a learning experience perspective. I think for me, what really struck me were two things. The first was I was struck by how much pride the IPO generated across the country. It was a homegrown Indian brand by an Indian woman, and I think that was quite incredible to be part of that historic milestone. I think moving on from that, that thrill sort of lasts for a couple of days, but I think moving on, you realize that I always felt Nykaa was a very disciplined and rigorous place to work, and we held ourselves to high standards. But once you're public, you hold yourselves to even higher standards from a discipline, rigor, corporate governance, in every regard. So I actually feel the IPO is making us just work a lot harder, a lot smarter, and a lot more thoroughly. And I think it's really forcing us to grow up, and I love the changes that it's bringing within the company.
What was that like for you, Anchit, just seeing the Nykaa stock being listed? What was that experience like for you?
For Falguni, the founder and CEO, as an ex-IPO investment banker, she understood the value that public markets and public investors can bring to the long-term sustainability and growth of a company like ours. So for us, it was never really a question. We built this company with, as you said, the right corporate governance, the right business model that delivers on both growth and profitability, which is unique in the space. And because we built the company with such tenets in mind from day one, I think that's why we were able to have a successful listing. Now, I think, again, to what Adwaita said, and for us also, this is an Indian company built by Indian talent. This is a company, homegrown company out of this country, and we're a consumer technology business, a new age business. So we believe this is a company that Indian citizens and the country can be proud of, that such a high quality business, but also high quality technology has come out of India and is competing with the best globally, right? I mean, if you look at most of the competition in India, in the e-commerce space, a lot of it is some of the best from the international arena. So I think that is what had led to the kind of excitement for the IPO from the retail investors. And I think it reflected in the way that the IPO was subscribed from the retail portion as well. Because finally, our consumers are getting a chance to become shareholders. And this company belongs to them. And I think it's such a beautiful story. And hopefully it's something that we'll continue to deliver on for our consumers who are now also our shareholders.
Anchit, Adwaita, I have to take a quick commercial break. On that note, we're back in just a moment. Welcome back. Our big leaders of tomorrow icon tonight is Nykaa. Since the IPO headlines, of course, the other headlines that have been taking a lot of mind space when you're reading anything on Nykaa is that your net profits have struggled a little bit, down about 60-odd%. And I've looked at the breakup in terms of what's contributing to the large percentage of those expenses. Employee expenses, etc., are going towards, some of the costs that you're seeing, but a large percentage of it is going towards brand awareness, from what I understand. Going forward, how perhaps are you looking at bringing down this customer acquisition cost? What could you maybe tell us?
We firstly, again, I'll reiterate, we are a unique business in the sense that we are still profitable, high growth, very high growth company with profitability. And for us, marketing, it's not really, we don't look at it as expense, but rather an investment for the future. And, for us, customer acquisition is incredibly important because, we went through a year and a half, 2 years of COVID, the pandemic. And during the early phase of the pandemic, there was, I think, companies across the country, across the globe, pulled back on marketing because they were not sure of what, when this pandemic would end, and they had to conserve capital. And so I think Nykaa, similar to all companies, did pull back slightly on its marketing spends and its customer acquisition during the first year of the pandemic. And so there was some amount of catch up that we felt was required because it's the customers which we acquire today, which will deliver the growth of the future. So that was really, I think, what you're seeing in the numbers is the fact that we are investing for future growth by acquiring the customers today.
I think what I'll add to that is, I think it's also important to note that Nykaa has started a whole bunch of new businesses and new growth levers. And so there's investment going into those new businesses as well. And we've not split that out right now in the quarterly results that we publish, but there's an element of that as well.
Adwaita, I was reading an earlier article of yours where you said that the initial years when the business was being pitched to venture capitalists, a lot of them said, we don't think the beauty business is going to become that big. So my question really is for the naysayers who perhaps looking at what Nykaa has achieved now. One, what would you like to say? And a second part to that is that now the beauty market and the fashion market and the e-tail space is becoming really, really competitive. Tata Digital perhaps looking at entering the space, Reliance Retail we're reading also, so this market is becoming highly competitive. So how are you viewing competition then?
So in terms of, what I'd say to the naysayers, I mean, I sort of like, don't want to get into that in terms of, what to say really. I'd rather phrase it as what would I like to say to kind of other entrepreneurs who might be hearing those kind of no's and, dealing with naysayers. I feel that you need to have a lot of resilience to be an entrepreneur and particularly get through those first couple of years where everyone, when no one sees the opportunity the way you do. And that is why, the opportunity is compelling is because very few people see it, right? If everyone saw the opportunity, then it wouldn't be there for you to take. So I think my first and foremost advice really to an entrepreneur who's hearing a lot of no's is toughen up, have thick skin, don't take the no's, have conviction in your business, be resilient, because it's very easy to get defeated from the no's that you hear in the early days. But if you make it through and keep your head high and sort of committed, I think a lot of times your conviction is probably right. So that would be the way I would position to them. In terms of competition, yes, competition is coming in, but we like to think that competition has always been here. Even when we started Nykaa 9 years ago, people were trying to sell beauty. The existing e-commerce players themselves were focused on beauty, but they weren't able to sort of really crack down on it. So I think Nykaa's focus and ways of doing vertical e-commerce is quite differentiated. We do think we have a moat in every regard, whether it's unique merchandise, whether it's our emphasis and understanding of the consumer, the way they consume content, the way we design our apps, our delivery experience, our inventory model. We feel we have a lot that really fortifies our business. So we're not really scared of competition because competition has always been there. They just happen to be talking a lot more about it right now. But we've managed to retain leadership position over all these years as well.
And naysayers don't exist only if you're trying to enter a new business. I do know that you have the entire foray into the fashion business. And I understand that, a lot of people saying this is such a huge market, there are already so many players, why would you look at this market? To someone like that, for an entrepreneur who's saying, I probably want to enter a market that already has a few players, what would you want to say to them based on your own experience?
I think that first and foremost, believing that the market is a good one, believing that there are gaps that you can sort of fill and do it in a compelling way, and then having the faith that you have what it takes to get it done is sort of my advice. So I think just being clear about the principles, that you like the space that you're entering and that you see clear gaps and white spaces that you want to plug in. And I think that's all you need to really get started and get in there. I think on fashion, the amount of naysayers we heard again 3.5, 4 years ago when we started talking about should we get into fashion, both internally, from well-wishers, from the investors, from the market, we heard a lot of no's. But again, half the battle is just having conviction and jumping in, right? And today, when fashion contributes to about 25% of the consolidated turnover of this company and is on a trajectory to go up even from here, I think it's that risk that you took, that plunge that you took, which really makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, I think if I could just add two things. One is, I think a company's success is not dependent on competition, but rather whether they are doing everything that they can do to serve the customer. So even if there is no competition in the space, but you're not doing right by the customers, you won't succeed. And I think no matter how much competition there is, if you have an attractive enough proposition and you are always thinking customer first, and that at Nykaa, what we do is we keep the customer in the room with us when we take decisions in many ways. And as a result, they're always the key stakeholder in any decision that is taken. And as a result, I think that's what's led us to continue to not only survive, but thrive despite the competition that has existed. And finally, I think, as you also pointed out, the beautiful thing about our country is that it's such a massive opportunity, right? If I look at beauty and fashion combined, it's over a $200 billion addressable market within the next 5 years. And no single player can take that full pie, right? Finally, there will be enough room for multiple players to coexist on the fashion side. And beauty is also a similar story. That being said, of course, on the beauty side, we are the leading retailer on the online side, and we have total the plan and the ambition is to absolutely maintain that leadership position in the beauty side, and we work day and night as a vertically specialized retailer, day in day out, just thinking about beauty and fashion. We are committed to achieving that.
And with the country opening up, with people now stepping out, once again going back to malls, etc., how is your omni-channel play and your strategy going to change, if at all? And what, based on your own experience and your own strategy, is your advice for someone who's watching today's interview?
Yeah, I think, we are believers in omni-channel. We moved into the offline space on the beauty side pretty much 3 years into the journey. So we did start as e-com, but we opened stores about 3 years in, and now we're at almost over 90 stores. And, the press releases that we've made in the past have directionally suggested that we might even go up to 200, 300 stores over the next couple of years. And I think, first and foremost, we really believe in the offline opportunity. If you look at beauty in particular as a space, 90% of the industry remains offline. So it's just a massive market to tap. And so I think having an offline, online play together is incredibly important. Number two, I think for us on the beauty side, being synonymous with the word beauty was really a priority. So I think leaving the offline space for someone else to take or not us, that wouldn't have been the right strategy. And number three, I think to build, premium brands in particular, some leg of offline is really important from a trial perspective. And a lot of data shows that people who we acquire offline tend to behave really well online. And, that interplay between the channels is actually really, effective. So net remain really bullish on omnichannel and would encourage entrepreneurs whose businesses are in particular a little bit high touch and tend to be, still offline focused in a large way to explore it in a meaningful manner. And I think the way offline also builds brand and physical distribution builds brand is also quite considerable and should be accounted for.
All right, completely out of time on tonight's episode, but we have so much more coming up, to stay tuned. For feedback on today's interview, do send it to us on the details that you see on your screens. Our number is there. All you have to do is just send us a WhatsApp message and we will get in touch with you. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.